The most dangerous man in Chicago asked me to let him disappear, and I told him to stop being dramatic. I should have kept walking that night. Every smart woman with rent due, student loans breathing down her neck, and a 12-hour shift behind her would have crossed the street, lowered her eyes, and pretended she had seen nothing. But I had never been very good at pretending. It was 1:47 in the morning when I left the rehab clinic on West Grand, my sneakers damp from the rain, my scrubs smelling faintly of antiseptic and coffee that had gone cold hours ago. The city looked emptied out, all glass towers and yellow streetlights, the kind of quiet that never felt peaceful, only paused. I was halfway to the bus stop when I noticed the black Rolls-Royce parked crooked against the curb, its hazard lights blinking like a heartbeat. The driver's door hung open. Steam curled from the hood. A dark stain marked the pavement beneath the back seat, thin at first, then widening under the rain. My fingers tightened around my keys. I told myself it was none of my business. I told myself rich men and expensive cars always had someone to call. Then I heard a breath. Low, ragged, human. I stepped closer, slow enough to hate myself for it. The man inside was slumped against the leather seat, one hand pressed to his side, his white shirt ruined beneath his black coat. Even injured, he looked unreal, like power had been carved into a human shape and dressed in a tailored suit. Pale skin, dark hair pushed back from a face too calm for someone losing that much strength. His eyes opened before I touched the door. Gray, cold, focused, not frightened. That was the first thing I noticed. Adrian Blackwell was not frightened. I knew his name because everyone in Chicago knew his name, even if they pretended they didn't. Blackwell Hotels, Blackwell Shipping, Blackwell charity galas with senators smiling beside him for cameras. And behind all of that, the whisper no one said too loudly. Mafia. He looked at me like I was a problem he did not have time to solve. Walk away, he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried the kind of command men obeyed without thinking. I almost did. My whole body. Wanted to. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my wrists. But then his hand slipped a little, and his breath broke for half a second. Not much. Just enough. Enough for me to see the man beneath the myth. You're bleeding on a public sidewalk, I said, dropping my bag and pulling out the clean towel I kept for emergencies. Try being intimidating after we stop that. His jaw tightened. I said leave. And I heard you. I pressed the towel carefully against his side. He flinched, not from pain, but from being touched. That stopped me more than the blood, more than the car, more than his name. He reacted like my hands had reached somewhere older than the wound. I'm a nurse, I whispered. You can threaten me after you're stable. His eyes locked on mine. Rain slid down his temple, caught on his lashes, made him look less like a king and more like a man who had not slept in years. For one strange second, the whole city narrowed to his breathing and my hand holding pressure against his side. Then he said something so soft I almost missed it. You should have left me where you found me. I looked at him then. Really looked. Past the suit. Past the name. Past the cold, beautiful mask that probably made stronger people step back. There was pain in him, but not just from tonight. It sat deeper, quieter, hidden under years of control. I did not know his story yet. I did not know about the locked room, the white roses, or the voice on the tape he was too afraid to hear. I only knew one thing as the rain soaked through my sleeves and Adrian Blackwell stared at me like mercy was the most dangerous thing in the world. Some people do not ask to be saved because they stopped believing they deserve it. The first thing Adrian Blackwell did after I stopped the bleeding was not thank me. He took my wrist. Not hard, not cruel, just firm enough to remind me that men like him did not receive help without turning it into control. His skin was cold from the rain, but his eyes were clear, too clear, watching my face like he was searching for fear. What is your name? He asked. Claire Bennett. I tried to pull my hand back. He let me, but only after one long second that made the air between us feel measured. You are coming with me, Claire Bennett. I almost laughed because shock does strange things to exhausted women at 2 in the morning. No, I am going home. His gaze moved past me to the empty street, to the clinic sign flickering behind my shoulder, to the shadows under the train tracks half a block away. Home is not safe after tonight. Because of you? His mouth did not move, but something in his expression changed. A small fracture. There and gone. Because you stopped. Before I could answer, 2 black vehicles turned the corner without headlights, silent as thoughts you do not want to have. Men in dark coats stepped out and moved toward us with careful urgency. No shouting, no chaos, just quiet obedience. One of them, a broad man with silver at his temples, looked at Adrian and went pale beneath the streetlight. "Boss." Adrian lifted one hand. That was all. The man stopped speaking. I knew then that whatever power Adrian held, it did not need volume. It lived in the space before other people decided to obey. They helped him from the Rolls-Royce into the back of an SUV. He did not lean on them. Not really. Pride kept his spine straight even when his breath shortened. I stood on the sidewalk with my medical bag clutched to my chest, rain running down my face, deciding whether fear or common sense should win. Then Adrian looked back at me through the open door. "Get in. You cannot order me around." "I can." His voice was low, tired, absolute. "But I am asking because you saved my life." That should not have softened me. It did. Maybe because he said it like the words had edges. Maybe because gratitude sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. I got in, but I sat as far from him as the seat allowed. The drive to his estate took 20 minutes through streets I barely recognized, past the river, past old warehouses turned into glass offices, past iron gates that opened before we stopped. His house was not a house. It was a stone fortress pretending to be a mansion, set back behind black trees and white security lights. Inside, everything smelled like cedar, rain, and wealth that never needed to explain itself. Marble floors, dark walls, no family photos, no warmth. A doctor was waiting in a private room, but Adrian dismissed him with one glance and told me to finish what I had started. "I am not your employee," I said. "No," he answered, removing his soaked coat with careful restraint. "You are the only person tonight who did not hesitate." I cleaned the wound in silence, keeping my hands professional, my breathing steady. He watched the wall instead of me. Every time my fingers brushed the old scars near his ribs, his body went still. Not tense from pain, tense from memory. There were many scars, but one near his chest was different, thin and pale, almost hidden beneath the others. When I paused, his eyes cut to mine. "Do not ask." I did not. "You wanted to." I pressed fresh gauze into place. "I want many things I do not say." For the first time, something almost like a smile touched his face. It vanished before it became human. Then, from somewhere above us, soft and impossible, a single piano note drifted through the ceiling. Adrian froze. The room changed. The men outside the door stopped moving. Even the rain against the windows seemed to lower its voice. I looked up. Who was playing? His hand closed around the edge of the table until his knuckles whitened. No one. Another note came. Slower. Broken. Like a memory trying to breathe. Adrian stood too fast and nearly lost his balance. I reached for him, but he stepped back before I could touch him. His face had gone empty, yet his eyes looked wounded in a way no bandage could reach. "You will stay on the first floor," he said. "You will not go upstairs. You will not ask about the music. And you will never open the last door at the end of the hall." That was when I understood. Adrian Blackwell was not afraid of enemies, pain, or death. He was afraid of a room in his own house. I did not sleep in Adrian Blackwell's house that night. I closed my eyes in the guest room they gave me on the first floor, but the room felt too clean, too quiet, too carefully prepared for people who were never meant to feel at home. The bed was larger than my entire bedroom back in West Town. The sheets smelled like lavender and money. A security guard stood somewhere outside my door, pretending not to be there. I could hear him shift his weight every few minutes, leather shoes whispering against polished wood. I lay on my back in borrowed sweatpants and one of my own clinic t-shirts, staring at the ceiling while rain tapped the windows like nervous fingers. Every smart part of me said I should run as soon as the house went still. Call a cab. Walk to the gate. Tell myself I had done enough. But houses have voices if you listen too long, and Adrian Blackwell's mansion was full of things no one wanted to say out loud. At 3:16 in the morning, the power went out. Not all at once. First the lamp beside my bed flickered. Then the hallway lights blinked twice. Then darkness folded over the house like a hand. Somewhere far above me, a piano played one note. Then another. My breath stopped. It was not music exactly. It was memory with broken fingers. Slow. Uneven. So soft, I wondered if exhaustion was inventing it. I opened my door. The guard was gone. The hallway stretched ahead in pale blue shadows from the storm outside, portraits and mirrors turning the walls into watching faces. I should have stayed where I was. Adrian had told me not to go upstairs. He had said it with the kind of voice that made even dangerous men obey. But I was not one of his men, and fear had never been good at keeping me from pain that sounded like a child trying to cry quietly. I climbed the stairs barefoot, one hand on the banister, each step cold beneath my feet. The second floor was empty. The third was colder. At the end of the hall, one door stood slightly open. Not much, just an inch. Enough for the smell to reach me. Dust, old roses, cedar, grief. I pushed it open with 2 fingers. The room inside had been preserved like someone had left 5 minutes ago and never came back. White curtains hung still over tall windows. A narrow bed sat against the wall, covered in a faded quilt with tiny blue flowers. Shelves held books, music boxes, a small silver trophy from a high school piano competition. On the dresser, dozens of white roses had dried into fragile ghosts. Above them were photographs. Adrian, younger, less hard around the eyes, smiling with a girl who looked about 19, pale skin, dark hair, and his same gray eyes made softer by trust. In every picture, she was leaning into him like the world was safe because he stood beside her. My throat tightened before I knew why. Then I saw the letters. They were stacked in a wooden box beside the piano, tied with a white ribbon. None of them had stamps. None had been mailed. The top envelope was addressed in careful handwriting to Grace. I knew I should not touch it. I touched it anyway. The paper trembled in my hand as I unfolded the first page. Grace, it began. I stood outside your door again tonight. I almost came in. I almost told you I was sorry. But sorry is too small for what I failed to protect. I read only that much before the floorboard behind me creaked. I turned. Adrian stood in the doorway, wearing a black shirt and the expression of a man who had just found someone standing inside his wound. The storm flashed behind him, carving his face in white light. For a second, neither of us spoke. The letter shook between my fingers. His eyes dropped to it, and whatever softness had survived in him closed like a door. Put it down, he said. I did. Slowly. Adrian. I heard the piano. You heard nothing. His voice was calm. Too calm. That was worse than anger. You were told not to come here. I looked around the room, at the roses, at the photographs, at the life frozen in place because one man could control an empire but not say goodbye. Who was she? The silence that followed felt older than the house. His jaw tightened once. Only once. My sister. He stepped inside, and every shadow seemed to move with him. Her name was Grace. Grace. He said her name like it was a prayer he had lost the right to finish. I stood beside the piano, barefoot on the cold floor, with dust on my fingers and his grief all around me, and I understood that I had not walked into a bedroom. I had walked into the part of Adrian Blackwell that he had sealed away so the rest of him could keep ruling. He crossed the room slowly, not toward me, but toward the dresser where the white roses lay curled and dry. His hand hovered above them without touching. Even that seemed too painful. She was 19, he said. His voice was flat, almost empty. She hated this house. She said it sounded like secrets when it rained. Outside, thunder rolled low over the trees. I looked at the photographs again, at the girl with his eyes and a smile bright enough to make the room feel less dead. What happened to her? I asked softly. His shoulders tightened. For a moment, I thought he would order me out. Instead, he looked at the window, at his own reflection trapped in the glass. She asked me to drive her to a recital. He swallowed once. I said no. The words were simple. The wound beneath them was not. I had a meeting downtown. Important men. Important money. Important lies. She stood in the foyer wearing a blue dress and told me that for one night, she wanted a brother instead of a boss. His mouth curved, but it was not a smile. I told her to stop being dramatic. My chest ached. I did not move closer. Something told me pity would make him shut down faster than anger. She took another car? He nodded. A car from my garage. A driver I had trusted for years. 3 miles from the concert hall, something went wrong. The official report called it a mechanical failure. His eyes found mine then, and they were colder than the storm. There are no mechanical failures in my world, Claire. Only messages. The room seemed to shrink around us. He turned away before I could read too much on his face. I was supposed to check the route. I was supposed to know who had been near the car. I was supposed to listen when she said she was scared of the people around me. His voice dropped lower. I did not listen. The piano gave a tiny sound as the wind moved through the cracked window, one soft note trembling in the dark. Adrian flinched. Not much, just enough for me to see it. So you kept her room like this? I said. As punishment. As evidence. Against whom? He looked at me. Me. That single word did more than any confession could have. It showed me the shape of his prison. Adrian Blackwell had not preserved Grace's room because he could not accept that she was gone. He had preserved it because every dried rose, every folded letter, every silent key on that piano gave him another reason not to forgive himself. I walked to the wooden box and looked at the letters again without touching them this time. You wrote to her. Every week for 6 years. But you never mailed them. Dead girls do not read apologies. His voice broke on the last word. Barely. But I heard it. I thought of all the people in the city who feared him. Men who lowered their voices when he passed. Politicians who smiled too carefully beside him. Enemies who measured their steps because Adrian Blackwell knew how to make the world bend. None of them knew this. None of them knew that the most powerful man in Chicago spent his nights writing letters to someone who would never answer. What would Grace say if she could read them? I asked. His jaw hardened. Do not do that. Do what? Turn her into comfort. I took the blow in silence because maybe he needed to throw something, and words were safer than anything else in that room. He moved to the piano and pressed one key with 2 fingers. The note came out thin and lonely. She played when I could not sleep, he said. After my father died. After I took over. After I became whatever this is. He stared at the key as if it had betrayed him by making sound. She believed there was still something good in me. Maybe she was right. His laugh was quiet and sharp. You met me on a sidewalk with blood on my shirt and men waiting in the dark. I met you telling me to walk away because you thought leaving would keep me safe. The silence after that felt different. Not softer, just less armed. Adrian looked at me for a long moment, and I saw it again. The hidden pain beneath the control, the man under the title, the brother under the boss. Then footsteps sounded in the hall. A man appeared in the doorway, the same silver-haired one from the street. Sir, he said carefully, we found something about the car. Adrian went still. The room changed. Around him. What? The man glanced at me, then back at Adrian. The signature on the old service order was forged. The word forged did not land like thunder. It landed like a key turning inside a lock no one had touched in 6 years. Adrian did not move at first. He stood beside Grace's piano with his hand still resting on the white key, his face so controlled it frightened me more than anger would have. The silver-haired man in the doorway kept his eyes lowered. Say it again, Vincent, Adrian said. Vincent swallowed. The service order for Grace's car was signed under your authorization, but the signature was copied. Whoever filed it wanted the garage records to show that you approved the inspection delay. Adrian's hand left the piano. Slowly, carefully, like any sudden movement might break the room in half. Who found this? Miles and records. He was checking the archived invoices like you ordered after tonight. Bring him here. He is already downstairs. Adrian walked past me without another word, but the air he left behind felt colder. I followed because no one told me not to, and because I could not unhear what I had heard. We went down to a private office behind the library, a room with dark shelves, locked cabinets, and a long table covered in files that smelled like dust and old secrets. A young man in glasses stood when Adrian entered. His hands shook so badly that the papers in them fluttered. Show me, Adrian said. Miles laid 2 documents side by side. One was a service order dated the week Grace died. The other was a charity contract Adrian had signed years earlier. Even I could see the difference once Miles pointed it out. The letters looked almost perfect, but the pressure was wrong. The curve of the B in Blackwell was too careful, too rehearsed. A performance of a signature, not a signature. Adrian stared at it for a long time. No one breathed loudly. No one shifted. Finally, he said, I blamed myself with a lie someone placed in my hand. His voice was so quiet I felt it under my ribs. Vincent looked wounded on his behalf. We do not know everything yet. Adrian's eyes lifted. But we know enough to begin. I had heard men speak with rage before. I had treated people after rage had passed through their lives and left them shaking. This was not rage. This was something colder and more dangerous because it had patience. I stepped closer before I could talk myself out of it. Adrian. He did not look at me. Not now, Claire. Yes. Now. The room went still in a different way. Miles looked at me as if I had just stepped in front of a moving train. Maybe I had. You just found out someone used your grief against you, I said. Do not let them use your anger the same way. His eyes finally came to mine. Gray, burning, hurt beyond pride. You think you know what this is? No, I said. I think I know what it costs to make pain your only language. That reached him. I saw it in the smallest change, the way his shoulders lowered by a fraction, the way his hand opened at his side like he had forgotten it had been a fist. Then Miles cleared his throat, careful and afraid. There is something else. He reached into the file and removed a small plastic evidence bag. Inside was an old cassette tape, labeled in blue ink with one word. Adrian. The name was written in a young woman's hand. Grace's hand. Adrian stepped back as if the tape had made a sound only he could hear. Vincent closed his eyes. It was logged with her personal items, Miles said. But it was never delivered to you. Adrian did not touch it. He looked at that small piece of plastic like it was a loaded weapon. I understood then why the forged paper had not broken him. This could. A lie could give him anger. Grace's voice might give him mercy, and mercy was the thing he feared most. Play it, Vincent said softly. Adrian's jaw tightened. Leave. No one moved. All of you. This time, they obeyed. Miles gathered the files with shaking hands. Vincent hesitated, then left too, closing the door behind him. The office became too quiet. Rain pressed against the windows. Somewhere in the mansion, the old pipes sighed. I reached for the tape, but Adrian's voice stopped me. Do not. It is hers. I know what it is. Then why are you afraid of it? His eyes flashed. Because I know my sister, Claire. I know how kind she was. I know she would try to forgive me even if I did not deserve it. My throat tightened. Maybe that is why you need to hear her. He looked away, and for the first time since I had met him, Adrian Blackwell looked young. Not weak. Not small. Just young in the way grief can take a grown man and return him to the moment he lost someone. I picked up the tape and held it out to him. He did not take it. I cannot, he whispered. 2 words. Barely sound. More honest than anything he had said before. I set the tape gently on the table between us. Then we will not play it tonight. His eyes moved back to mine, suspicious of kindness. I gave him the only truth I had. But you do not get to bury her voice forever just because you are scared she might still love you. By morning, the storm had washed the windows clean, but nothing inside Adrian Blackwell's house felt new. The cassette remained on the office table between us, small, silent, impossible to ignore. Adrian stood beside the window with his hands in his pockets, watching the wet trees beyond the glass as if the answer to 6 years of grief might be hiding in the branches. He had not slept. Neither had I. There are kinds of silence that rest beside you. His did not. His silence paced. His silence guarded doors. His silence kept one hand on the past and the other around his own throat. You should go back to your clinic, he said finally. His voice was smooth again, controlled, polished until no cracks showed. Vincent will drive you. I looked at the tape. Is that an order or a request? It is protection. From who? He turned then, and the sunlight caught the tired lines near his eyes. From me. I should have been afraid when he said it. Maybe part of me was. But fear was not the loudest thing in the room. Grief was. You are not the danger you think you are, I said. His mouth hardened. You saw a room and a few old letters. That does not make you an expert on what I am. No, I said. It makes me someone who knows when a man is using guilt as a cage because freedom scares him more than punishment. The words hit him. I saw them land. For 1 second, Adrian looked at me without the mask, and underneath it was exhaustion so deep it made my chest ache. Then the mask returned. Enough. He picked up the cassette and placed it inside the desk drawer with careful finality. The click of the lock sounded louder than it should have. Grace is not a project for you. Neither am I. I never said you were. Then stop trying to fix me. I stepped closer, not enough to corner him, only enough to make him hear me without the whole room between us. I am not trying to fix you, Adrian. I am trying to stop you from mistaking broken for finished. His eyes sharpened. You think that is beautiful? No. I think it is lonely. The office door opened before he could answer. Vincent stood there, his expression tense. Sir, we traced the forged order to an old account connected to Daniel Mercer. Adrian went very still. Even the light seemed to pull back from him. That is impossible. The account was closed 4 days after Grace died. I did not know the name, but I knew the way it changed the room. Daniel Mercer was not just a suspect. He was a ghost with a key. Adrian moved to the desk, unlocked the drawer, and took out a file with such control that it frightened me. Inside was a photograph of a man in his 40s with kind eyes and a hand resting on young Adrian's shoulder. On the back, written in black ink, were 3 words, family by choice. Who is he? I asked. Adrian did not look up. My father's best friend. My advisor. The man who taught me how to survive after Grace died. The cruelty of it was quiet. That made it worse. If Mercer had forged the order, then the man who comforted Adrian after the loss may have helped create the wound. Adrian closed the file. His face had emptied again. Vincent, prepare the cars. I moved in front of him before thinking. No, his eyes lifted slowly. Move. No, Claire. My name in his mouth was warning, not anger. This is not your world. You are right. In my world, when someone is hurting, we do not hand them a set of keys and let them drive straight back into the pain. His voice dropped. He took my sister from me. Maybe he did. But if you go to him like this, he takes the rest of you too. For a moment, I thought he would walk around me. Instead, he stood there, close enough that I could see the faint tremor in his hand before he curled it into a fist. You should have left me on that sidewalk, he whispered. I shook my head. You can scare the whole city, Adrian. But you do not scare me when you are grieving. His breathing changed. Just once. A small, broken inhale. Then he looked away like being seen hurt more than any wound. I do not know how to stop, he said. The confession was barely sound. I reached for the desk drawer, opened it, and placed the cassette in his palm. He stared down at it, as if Grace herself had reached through time and touched him. Then start here, I said. Not with Mercer. Not with revenge. With her voice. The tape player looked ancient on Adrian's desk, the kind with square buttons and a tiny speaker that belonged in a box of forgotten things. Not in the center of a room, where powerful men waited outside like the whole house was holding its breath. Adrian sat in the leather chair, the cassette in his hand, his thumb moving once over the blue ink of his name. I stood across from him because sitting felt too casual for what we were about to do. Some doors should be open standing up. You do not have to do this alone, I said. His eyes stayed on the tape. I have done everything alone. Maybe that is the problem. He gave me a look that would have made most people apologize. I did not. After a long moment, he slid the cassette into the player. The clicks sounded final. His hand hovered over the button, and I saw it again, the tiny tremor he tried to hide by being still. Then he pressed play. Static filled the room first. Soft. Uneven. Then a girl's voice came through, young and breathless, with a smile inside it that made the air change. Adrian, if you are hearing this, then I was right to be scared, and you are probably blaming yourself because that is what you do best. He stopped breathing. I know because I was watching his chest. Grace's voice continued, thin from age but clear enough to break him gently. I am not angry at you. I was angry last night, but not forever. Never forever. You are my brother before you are anything else, even if you forget that sometimes. Adrian closed his eyes. His hand curled around the edge of the desk. Daniel told me not to trust the driver you assigned, Grace said. He said there were people watching the house. He said if I took the gray sedan from the south garage, I would be safer. I know you would tell me to call you. I know I should. But I am tired of being the reason you look over your shoulder. My stomach tightened. Daniel Mercer. The room seemed to darken around that name. Adrian opened his eyes, but he was not looking at anything in front of him anymore. He was somewhere 6 years away, standing in a foyer with a girl in a blue dress and a sentence he could never take back. The tape crackled. Grace laughed softly, and that was worse than crying. You always think love means standing between people in danger. But sometimes I just wanted you to sit beside me at dinner. Sometimes I wanted you to be late to a meeting because I mattered more. Adrian's face changed. Not dramatically. No grand collapse. Just one line of control after another giving way until all that remained was a brother hearing the truth too late. Grace's voice lowered. If something happens, listen to me. Do not become him. Do not become Dad. Do not turn grief into a throne. And please, Adrian, do not become a ghost just because I am gone. The tape clicked off. Silence rushed in so hard it felt physical. Adrian did not move. Neither did I. The sunlight had shifted across the floor, touching the edge of his shoe, the desk, the cassette player, making ordinary things look almost holy. She knew, he whispered. She tried to warn me. She loved you, I said. His eyes lifted to mine, and there was no coldness left in them. Only ruin. I let Mercer stand beside me at her funeral. His voice was barely there. I let him put a hand on my shoulder while I buried my sister, and thanked him for keeping me from falling apart. I walked around the desk slowly. He did not step away when I came close. That was new. He did not keep you from falling apart, I said. He taught you to fall in the direction he wanted. Adrian looked down at the cassette as if it had rewritten the laws of his life. Before either of us could speak again, the phone on his desk rang. Once. Twice. Vincent entered without waiting to be called, his face pale. Sir, Mercer knows we found the files. Adrian stood, and the boss returned in one breath, but not completely. The brother was still there, wounded and awake. Vincent glanced at me. He also knows about Miss Bennett. Cold moved through me. Adrian noticed. Of course he did. What did he say? Adrian asked. Vincent swallowed. He said old family matters should not be discussed with strangers. A message tone sounded from Adrian's phone. He opened it, read the screen, and every light in his face went out. He passed it to me without speaking. The text was short. Send the nurse away before she learns what Grace learned. My hands went cold, but I did not drop the phone. Adrian reached for it, his voice low and certain. You are leaving Chicago tonight. I looked at the tape, then at him. The most feared man in the city was trying to protect me by becoming alone again. I shook my head. No, his jaw tightened. Claire. No. I said again, softer this time. I did not stay through your pain just to run from the truth. Mercer did not come for me in the way I expected. There were no screeching tires, no masked men, no dramatic scene from the kind of movie people pretend they would survive. He came through a phone call to my clinic at 7:12 that evening, using the voice of a tired old man who knew exactly how to sound harmless. Miss Bennett, he said, Adrian is about to make a mistake that will ruin what is left of his sister's name. Come alone if you want to stop him. I should have hung up. I should have told Vincent. I should have remembered that grief makes people brave in stupid ways. Instead, I wrote the address on the back of an appointment card with a hand. That barely shook. It led to an old observatory near the lake, closed for renovations, all white stone and tall windows facing a gray Chicago sky. Mercer stood beneath the broken dome in a camel coat, looking less like a monster than I wanted him to. That was the most frightening part. Evil did not always arrive with sharp edges. Sometimes it smiled like a family friend and offered you a chair. You are smaller than I imagined, he said. Adrian makes people sound larger when he fears losing them. I kept my coat wrapped tight around me. You used Grace. His smile faded just enough to show the man underneath. Grace was sentimental. Adrian was distracted. Families fall because someone refuses to make hard choices. You mean because someone betrays them? He sighed, almost disappointed. You have been with him for 2 days and think you understand loyalty. I heard the door open behind me before Mercer did. His eyes shifted over my shoulder, and for the first time, real fear touched his face. Adrian walked in alone. No guards. No shouting. Just a black coat, pale skin, gray eyes, and a silence that made the room feel smaller. Let her leave, he said. Mercer laughed softly. Still trying to save one woman because you could not save the first? I felt the word strike Adrian. I saw it in the way his hand flexed once at his side. But he did not break. He looked at me instead. Not as a possession. Not as a weakness. As a person standing in the room because I had chosen to stand there. Claire, he said, come here. I walked to him. Mercer watched us with the bitter patience of a man who had built his life around pulling invisible strings. You cannot prove anything, he said. Adrian reached into his coat and placed a small recorder on the table between them. Grace's voice had given him mercy. Mercer's voice, captured during my phone call, had given him proof. Vincent and 2 federal investigators stepped through the side entrance a second later. Not Adrian's men. Not his world. The real one. Badges. Warrants. Paperwork. Consequences that did not need blood to be powerful. Mercer stared at Adrian as if betrayal belonged only to him. You would hand me to them? Adrian's face remained still, but his eyes were different now. Awake. Human. I wanted to end you for 6 years without knowing your name, he said. Then I heard my sister ask me not to become a ghost. Mercer leaned closer, his voice turning sharp. Mercy makes you weak. Adrian looked at him for a long moment. No. Mercy means you do not get to make me into you. That was when I understood what had changed. Adrian had not forgiven Mercer. He had not forgiven the lies, the lost years, the room full of roses, or the little sister who never made it to her recital. But he had chosen not to let revenge become the last language Grace ever taught him. As the investigators led Mercer away, the old man looked back at me with hatred in his eyes. I should have looked away. I did not. Adrian stood beside me, close enough that our sleeves touched, but he did not reach for me. He waited. The most powerful thing he did that night was nothing at all. Outside, the city lights trembled across the lake, and for the first time since I met him, Adrian Blackwell looked at the horizon instead of the past. The house felt different when we returned before dawn. It was still enormous, still guarded by iron gates and silent men in dark coats, still filled with marble floors and rooms too polished to belong to anyone ordinary. But something had shifted. Not in the walls. In Adrian. He did not walk ahead of me like a man escaping a feeling. He walked beside me, slower than before, one hand tucked inside his coat where the wound from that first night still pulled at him when he breathed too deeply. Vincent waited in the foyer, his eyes moving from Adrian to me and back again. "It is done," Adrian said. 2 words. No triumph. No celebration. Just the quiet exhaustion of a man who had finally set down a weapon he had carried too long. Vincent nodded, and for the first time since I met him, he looked relieved. Adrian climbed the stairs without asking me to follow. I did anyway. The 3rd-floor hallway was dark except for the thin blue light of morning pressing through the windows. At the last door, he stopped. His hand rested on the handle. I could see the memory moving through him, not as a storm this time, but as weather that had finally started to pass. "I locked this room the day after the funeral," he said. "I told everyone it was because I could not stand people touching her things." He looked at the door. "That was not true. I locked it because I thought grief was the last place I still belonged to her." I said nothing. Some truths do not need an answer. He opened the door. The room waited exactly as we had left it. White curtains, dried roses, photographs, the piano sleeping beneath dust and time. Adrian crossed to the dresser and picked up one of the roses. It crumbled slightly in his fingers, fragile from years of being kept past its season. He did not flinch. He let the pieces fall into his palm. "She would hate this," he said softly. "All these dead flowers." I smiled because I could hear the sister in that sentence, the girl who had once complained that the house sounded like secrets when it rained. "Then give her fresh ones." He looked at me, not surprised, not guarded, just listening. By 8 o'clock that morning, Vincent had sent someone to a flower shop on Michigan Avenue. Not white roses, yellow tulips, because Adrian remembered that Grace had once filled the kitchen with them in April and said the house looked less rich and more alive. He placed them on the dresser himself. Then he sat at the piano. For a long moment, his hands hovered over the keys, uncertain in a way I had never seen from him. Power had always known where to put his hands. Grief did not. Healing did not. He pressed one key. The note was soft, uneven, barely music. Then another. Then a third. Not a song. Not yet. But the room changed around the sound. Air moved. Morning light touched the photographs. The dead quiet finally loosened its grip. Adrian stopped after a few notes and bowed his head. I stood near the door, giving him space, because staying does not always mean stepping closer. Sometimes it means letting someone return to himself without making an audience of his pain. "Claire," he said. I looked at him. "Stay." The word came out rough, stripped of command. He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. "Again. Not because I can protect you. Not because I can give you anything. Stay because I am trying to learn how to live, and when you are in the room, I remember that I want to." My throat tightened. The man who had once told me to walk away now sounded afraid I might actually do it. I walked to the piano and sat beside him, leaving a careful inch of space between us. "Then learn," I said. Weeks later, we went to Grace's grave together. The cemetery sat 20 miles north of the city, where the wind moved softly through old trees and the skyline looked far enough away to forgive. Adrian placed yellow tulips against the stone. He did not apologize this time. He had done that for 6 years. Instead, he told her about the clinic he was funding in her name, about the music room he was opening for children who had survived things they did not yet have words for, about the woman who had found him bleeding in the rain and refused to mistake his silence for strength. When he finished, he reached for my hand. Gently. Waiting. I gave it to him. He ruled the city, people said. Maybe he did. But that morning, standing beneath the pale Illinois sky, I understood the truth Grace had left behind on an old cassette tape. A man is not saved when the world fears him. He is saved when someone sees the broken place and stays long enough for light to enter.